guys, welcome to 𝑽𝒊𝒐𝒍𝒐 Awakening. Today we got Jurassic Jammer featuring the new Archeops from Black Bolt or White Flare, I can't remember, but we're using its ability to basically choose any one of our opponent's Pokemon, devolve it, and then retreat or switch back into our Bronzong to do Evolution Jammer, locking our opponent from playing any Pokemon from their hand to evolve their Pokemon. So they still get to play Grand Tree, they still get to do TM Evolution, but they only have that many copies of those cards to spare. Obviously, A-Spec, you're only allowed to play one Grand Tree in your deck. All we need to do is get our Stadium card. We have our Secret Box as well to pull out our Town Store, helping us search for our TM Evolution or even Air Balloon so that we get to retreat into Meloetta for us to play our turn 1 Evolution. We have Secret Box to pull out the Fossil. We got also Carmine and 𝑧𝒄𝒂𝒓𝒄𝒍𝒂𝒓𝒄𝒍𝒂𝒓𝒄𝒂𝒓𝒄𝒂𝒓𝒄𝒂𝒓𝒄𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂 TM Evolution. On our first turn, going first, we get to attack with our Meloetta thanks to its ability. So with debut performance, your Meloetta EX gets to do Evolution. You get to use any TM on your first turn going first. And that's going to help us accelerate our evolution engine, getting out our Archeops into play as fast as possible, evolving our Bronzong at the same time, so that we get to do Evolution Jammer from the get-go on our second turn going first, or on our second turn going second. Going second, you still want to be doing TM Evolution. You don't want to be playing Salvatore. We have no more Salvatore for this list. So initially I added 𝑽𝒊𝒐𝒍𝒂𝒓𝒄 with Salvatore, but now we have no more of those cards just because we want to be doing TM Evolution from the get-go. And then if our opponent plays Rare Candy or TM Evolution, if they have evolutions on their next turn, if they go first on their second turn, if they play Rare Candy to evolve their Dragapult or whatever, we actually get to still devolve that Pokemon and then lock them from then on. So we're choosing to do the lock on our second turn just because we have Archeops to basically reverse their evolution and then, lock them from throughout the entire game. We are intending on locking them from evolving any of their Pokemon for the rest of the game, but we still have to be aware that they can still play extra copies of TM Evolution. They can still play cards like Nidorina. Nidorina has an attack that allows you to evolve your Pokemon for 1 Darkness energy cost. So if they play those cards, we still need our Archeops' ability every single turn. But if they don't have Nidorina, if they don't have enough TM Evolutions, we just need to switch a couple times with our Archeops in the active, devolve their Pokemon, selecting the right Pokemon to devolve. Obviously, choose the stage 2 first and then devolve the stage 1 later on in the game. If they have a TM Evolution, if they evolve more than 2 or 3 Pokemons by their second turn, then we actually have to be a bit more careful and play maybe a second copy of Archeops. I don't think it's that easy. We do have Rare Candy though for this deck, and we have 4 copies of the Fossil, so maybe at some point in the game we can do a double switch and retreat using the abilities to devolve 2 of their Pokemons. So for our switch cards, we got 3 Surfer, 2 Jet Energy, and 1 item switch along with 2 Air Balloons with 1 Secret Box to search for our item, Stadium, Supporter, and Tool card, 1 of each, along with our Arven to get the item switch, or even the Pokegear to dig for our Surfer, and Town Store to pull out the Air Balloon. So we got no more Hilda to dig for the Jet Energy just because it doesn't really help early game. Getting the evolution doesn't really help for the setup. You could maybe think about playing Colress's Tenacity, which actually helps you get either your Artazon for Bronzor or your Town Store to dig for the Air Balloon or TM Evolution. So TM Evolution, you need it for Meloetta obviously, but we might also need the Air Balloon for the retreat, helping us put the Meloetta into the active spot so we get to use the attack on our very first turn. But yeah, I think that's enough explaining about the deck list. Let's just focus on the current game. Now we're up against Charizard EX with Cleffa and Pidgeot. They got Defiance Band as well. Not sure why they attached it to the Cleffa, but they are evolving the Charmeleon right here. It's fine. If they do a Rare Candy, it's still okay just because we got, again, I'm repeating myself, but we got the Archeops ready to go on the next turn. All we need to do is attach the energy and switch into the Archeops, retreat, play the Bronzong, Evolution Jammer. We don't actually need to retreat, switch right now. We can actually switch later, but it would be a lot better if they have a Charizard EX in play right now. It would be much better if we can get the Jet Energy with Carmine, or hopefully the item switch, Secret Box, what have you. I think we already played our Secret Box, I'm not sure. But here comes the Carmine. I'm not sure if it's the right move to play 3 Surfer. Maybe we should go for 2 Surfer and 2 item switch. It really comes down to personal preference and maybe consistency as well. I prefer the extra supporter though, just because we don't have a lot of ways to draw cards for this list. 𝒂𝒂𝒓𝒄𝒂𝒓𝒄𝒂𝒓𝒄𝒂𝒓𝒄𝒂𝒓𝒄𝒂𝒓𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂 waiting for the KO for us to draw cards. We're not playing MEW EX either. We don't have the Dunsparce or whatever other draw engine. We got no Zoroark EX. Reason being, we don't want to be wasting our prize cards, so it's important to play the right cards, to bench the right Pokemons, to not bench unnecessary basics that you don't need. So if you don't need the Squawkabilly, don't even put it into play. Be very aware that the current meta plays Iron Hands, and if they kill off your Squawkabilly with Iron Hands, with one hit, they actually get to do it with MU very much. 120 is enough just because it's a flying type, and that means they're drawing 3 prize cards for a single knockout in a single turn, which is really bad. And if they do a prime catcher or boss on your Munkidori, knock it out again with MU very much, they're getting 2 more prize cards. So if you are playing against Zekrom or Reshiram, any other lightning box, you know, if they play a lot of basic Pokemon like Raging Bolt as well, make sure to get your Farigiraf into play as early as possible, and do not be benching other Pokemons. If you bench extra Pokemons, you're giving them the extra prizes, you're giving them the extra knockout. Even if you think they might not have enough prize cards to win the game, they could actually do something like Briar at the last minute with a Terra Pikachu or something, or even pull out another Iron Hands and another boss. That's all they need though. The extra 1 prize is sometimes all they need to win the game, so be very careful. If you don't need to be benching other stuff, do not be benching other stuff. If they play like the Zeraora though, Zeraora gets to hit 210 damage on our Farigiraf. If Zeraora hits for 210, you might have to bench a Munkidori to transfer the damage counter, denying them the knockout with their Ionos, Kilowattrel, Electric, or whatever 1 prizers that they have to attack with. You know, recovering 30 HP can actually give you that extra 1 turn to help you play your Archeops and devolve their you know, we are actually doing a snipe with Farigiraf as well. We got only one Crispin for it, but if they can't actually get enough energy in time, they do have the, what's it called again? They do have Electric Generator though, so they might be able to attack with the Zeraora quite early. They might be able to knock out your Farigiraf before you get to attack a second time. But if you can actually pull off a second hit with your Farigiraf, we can actually devolve the Electric or the Kilowattrel to get that extra 1 prize, and while denying them from using the ability a second time. So on their next turn, they might actually pull up another evolution though. But yeah, it's kind of a dilemma. If you bench your Fossil, if you want to be using the ability, obviously you gotta bench it early. If you bench it though, you risk the chance of your opponent pulling out another boss. But Archeops is actually not a flying type, and it has 140 HP, so they might need the future booster if they're gonna do a knockout, a 1-hit knockout on the thing. You know, 120 is not enough, and they need 4 energies on the Iron Hand, so we might actually have enough time to play the Farigiraf for getting enough KOs to draw all the prizes, winning the game with just that 1 EX. So walling with the Farigiraf is actually gonna be our sole win condition in some games, and we might not even need to play our Bronzong at all for the entire game, just because if they don't have any evolutions worth blocking, like if they do Noctowl, I don't think it's necessary for us to play the Evolution Jammer, just because Raging Bolt can still attack and they can do big damage as well. So maybe we should be adding Luxurious Cape for Bronzong, I'm not sure, just because Lux Cape would actually give it a little bit more tank. If they can hit 110 damage with their stage 1 or basic Pokemon, if they play a full basic, obviously we got Farigiraf, but if they play a stage 1, which is pretty easily evolved with TM Evolution, with Genesect, well, Genesect, they still have to evolve from their hand though with Genesect, right? So if they have TM Evolution, if they you know, can attack with their stage 1 with pretty big damage, then we might need the Luxurious Cape, although it might not actually do much, just because 2 10 HP is not a lot anyways. And Gholdengo, for example, can do a straight KO. There's not really much point to keeping our Bronzong alive, even though we have 2 Munkidoris to basically keep it that way. But I feel like the priority is to cycle back the Bronzong and evolve the second one. As soon as the first one gets KO'd, we can already evolve and do Evolution Jammer again and keep cycling the Bronzong, you know, while playing our Archeops' ability. Obviously, after the KO, put your Archeops in the active first, retreat after using its ability onto your second Bronzor, and then evolve it, do Evolution Jammer that way. So maybe we should factor in a Miriam or Sacred Ash into the list so that we get to recycle the Gong and keep on locking them non-stop, even if they do a straight KO. We can eventually devolve their primary attacker and lock them from then on, over and over until the game ends. So this is a control deck for sure, denying them from getting any of their evolution EXs into play, or walling with our Farigiraf, preventing all damage done to it by our opponent's basic Pokemon EXs. So anyways, I think I'm just gonna end the voice right here and you guys focus on the game. Please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. If you find this combo interesting or helpful, drop comments down below about what you guys think of the new card Archeops with the Ancient Wing ability that evolves, allows you to devolve any one of your opponent's Pokemon by putting the highest stage evolution card back into their hand. If that Pokemon is in the active spot, it is pretty difficult to evolve it just because it's a stage 2, is a fossil as well. But we got Carmine and 𝒄𝒂𝒓𝒄𝒂𝒓𝒄𝒂𝒓𝒄𝒂𝒓 EX to pull it out into play as early as the first turn, using our secret box as well to pull out that item onto the bench. So that's all for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you next time. Have a great day and bye everyone!